In what may be one of the most shocking displays of authoritarianism we have seen yet, a judge has taken away custody from a mother of her child for not being vaccinated. Now, this story isn't so simple as to say that, well, she was ignoring the science and putting her child at risk. No, that's not the case. You see, this was a child support hearing, not a custody hearing. And the judge abruptly asks the mother if she has been vaccinated, to which she responds that due to adverse effects from previous vaccination, her doctor has advised her not to get the vaccine. This isn't the case of a mother simply saying, I don't want to get it. This was her saying, well, my doctor says I can't, which is a reality for many people. You must ask your doctor what makes sense for you. But because this woman's doctor gave her sound medical advice for her life, the judge ruled that she would lose custody rights of her own child. Now, this is not a case of the state just taking the child and putting it into foster care. This is the case of the state seizing the child from the mother and giving it to the father. It's a bit better than putting the kid in foster care, but it's still authoritarian nonetheless, and one of the most shocking stories we've seen. However, my friends, this segment I am producing is not about the bad news. It's about the line being crossed. In New York City, for example, there is no religious or medical exemption. That means if you are disabled or for religious reasons unable to get the vaccine, you will be terminated from your job, ineligible for employment, and unable to use public accommodation. This is beyond reprehensible. It is beyond standard discrimination. And I can only see it as a violation of the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. Some people are medically unable. What are we supposed to do? Just excise them from society through no fault of their own? I won't stand for that. But as I said, there's good news here because the resistance has formed. It is large, it is angry, and it's growing. Around the world, people are protesting these vaccine mandates in European countries, in Australia, in Canada, and all across the U.S. You need only Google search vaccine mandate protest, and the stories are nearly limitless. I pulled up as many as I can, and I got to be honest, it's hard to track all of the different cities and states where people are rising up and saying no, but more so than just regular people saying no. Nurses, doctors, firefighters, emergency medical service, and police in Chicago and New York City saying no. And you know what my issue is with the mandates? Is that your life, this is your life. You have to decide, based on advice from your trusted doctor, what to do with your health. The state should not be telling you what to do with your body. Uh-oh. Here come all of the angry leftists in favor of government authoritarianism to tell me something about pro-lifers. That ain't me. Never has been. And everybody knows it, much to the angry comments that I get all the time for having a more libertarian position, although I will admit, ethically challenging position. I believe the state should not be intervening in medical decisions, and I have always felt that way. But now the despots, the petty tyrants who would tell you the state should have no say in your private medical decisions are now cheering for judges and law enforcement and governments mandating something with no medical exemptions. It may be New York City today, but I assure you this thing is spreading. There still is an opportunity to resist it, and these people are. We have already seen many government officials back down from certain restrictions because the people said no. And you know how they did it? Nonviolent civil disobedience, mass noncompliance, peaceful resistance. It works. Let's read this first story. Before we do, head over to timcast.com and become a member in order to get access to exclusive members-only segments on the Timcast IRL podcast, as well as an advertisement-free experience on the website, and you'll be supporting our fierce and independent journalists. We got a heck of a doozy. One story that I think you'll really want to be checking out, a Moderna vaccine truck crashed in West Virginia. Hazmat crews were dispatched. Airspace was shut down. It doesn't seem to be that big of a deal, but it's interesting nonetheless. The hazmat was in response to what they say was fuel and oil leaking out, which is standard protocol. I don't want people to be freaking out. But it's good journalism, and you'll see the amount of due diligence put into getting the facts and calling the DOD, calling these organizations to get quotes. But now and also don't forget, like the video, subscribe to the channel, give a good review on the podcast, all that stuff. Let's read the news, the shocking news first. From USA Today, Chicago judge rules mom cannot see her 11-year-old son because she's not vaccinated. A judge in Chicago barred Rebecca Furlet, the mother of an 11-year-old boy, from partial parental custody of seeing her son because she is not vaccinated for COVID-19. Furlet is appealing the decision, claiming the judge was placing his views onto her. Quote, I've had adverse reactions to vaccines in the past and was advised not to get vaccinated by my doctor. It poses a risk, Furlet told the Chicago Sun-Times. I was confused because the hearing was just supposed to be about expenses and child support. I asked him what it had to do with the hearing, and he said, I am the judge, and I make the decisions for your case. Furlet's lawyer, Annette Fernholz, told several Chicago media outlets that her client and ex-husband have been divorced for 7 years, now sharing custody, and that the ex-husband did not address the lack of vaccination as an issue. Cook County Judge James Shapiro asked Furlet during a child support hearing over Zoom if she was vaccinated. Upon her answer of no, the judge stripped her of all parenting rights until she receives the vaccination. Receives a vaccination in violation of her own doctor's orders? Now that is twisted. If the state can mandate a medical procedure in defiance of your doctor, imagine where that goes next. Has your appendix been removed? No, my doctor says it doesn't need to be. Well, I'm taking your kids until it does. Because just imagine, what if in the middle of the night you wake up with stomach pains and you're rushed to the hospital? Who would look after your children? It's vestigial anyway. Get it taken out. No, I get it. Vaccines are a minor and albeit safe medical procedure. At least that's the general consensus. But that's why I am not going to advise you on what to do and think you need to make those decisions and talk with people you know and trust, medical professionals that help your family. I may have opinions you don't like, but the one opinion we can agree on is I'm not going to tell you what to do with your life because I don't know your medical history and I don't want to know your private details because some people may be embarrassed by this. And people in general, all people have a right to privacy when it comes to medical issues. Quote, the trial court clearly exceeded its authority in sua sponte, by its own accord, suspending the mother's parenting time when the issue before the court was child support, attorney Fernholz told Fox 32 in Chicago. The father did not bring this issue before the court. Furlet told the Sun-Times that she talks to her son every day over the phone. He cries. He misses me. I send him care packages. The father's attorney, Jeffrey M. Leving, said he supported the judge's decision. There are children who have died because of COVID. I think every child should be safe, and I agree the mother should be vaccinated. Amazing. Her doctor said no. What business is that of a judge in a child support hearing? They're going to say nationwide hospitals are reporting an increase in pediatric COVID-19 cases as the Delta variant spreads. And health officials have urged those who are eligible to get vaccinated to protect others who cannot. Ultimately, I'll tell you where I end up. As I've stated, I think it's fine. And there are some people, I think it's safe and fine. And there's some people who don't like that. I'm not here to get into a debate about whether or not you like vaccines or not. I ain't a doctor. You see? And so people like commenting saying, Tim keeps advising us to go talk to somebody else. Why would you get advice from me? I'm a dude talking on the internet in a room with a bunch of windows and I can see trees and mountains. I have opinions on liberty, freedom, human rights, the Constitution, and we can have discussions about other things. But I can't advise you on financial issues or legal matters or medical issues. And neither should a judge be allowed to violate those same tenets. Imagine if the judge said, I hereby order you to put all of your money from your 401k into waffles. Bangs the gavel. You'd be like, what? You can't do that. I hereby instruct you to fire your lawyer and hire the one I want. No, you can't do that either. There are certain lines we don't cross when it comes to giving advice. And there are certainly a lot of crackpots who want to give you advice. So I'm not here to give you advice on any of those regards. Now, I will certainly maybe give advice in like, if I'm saying something like people should sue, they should fight back. Yeah, that's a bit different from saying you should invoke a certain legal defense or this is your path forward. I'll talk about myself. When it comes to medical or financial issues, I avoid that stuff. Now it's heating up out there, my friends. Check this out. NYPD's largest police union vows to sue over possible COVID vaccine mandate. Possible. Oh, man, what's going on? The Big Apple's largest union told its members Wednesday that it would sue the city if cops are required to get the vaccine. If the city attempts to impose a vaccine mandate on PBA members, we will take legal action to defend our members' right to have such personal medical decisions. Police Benevolent Association President Patrick Lynch wrote in an email, "Whoa, hold on there, mister. I thought de Blasio already mandated all businesses and all employees and all persons must be vaccinated by September 13th. You mean to tell me the police are not currently under that restriction or that mandate?" Amazing how they do that, isn't it? The announcement comes on the heels of Mayor Bill de Blasio's announcement requiring all New York City school staffers get the jab. As of this writing, the city has not indicated whether it will attempt to impose vaccine mandates on other city workers, including officers. The message to its members obtained by the Post is the first public comment the PBA has made about mandating the vaccine since cops were able to get immunized. The NYPD was one of the first groups eligible for the vaccine in January, after all the city unions banded together and lobbied for cops to jump up in the line. You see how that makes sense? How they're like, yo, we want this to be available to first responders, to police officers. I respect that. They didn't come out and say everyone should be forced to get it. Because what if you can't? On September 13th, unless something changes, you are going to see a wave of mass layoffs in New York City. I don't know what that number is. I looked into it. Apparently, the number of people in New York City who are considered disabled for one reason or another is about 11%. Of those who are disabled, it is probably a very small percentage, a small faction, that are disabled with something that would prevent vaccination. These are people who may have a history of anaphylaxis, adverse reactions, multiple sclerosis, epilepsy, Guillain-Barré syndrome, things like that. Now, I don't know what the numbers would be. It's not something we can just easily extrapolate. We don't know the prevalence of each and every one of these disabilities. But the adverse reaction may not be listed as a disability anyway, but could be now, considering some people may have just had very severe allergic reactions. The doctor says, no, it's not for you. And now these people will be terminated. So I simply say to all of those businesses in New York City propping up this mandate, I wonder what's more worrisome for you. A $250,000 fine for a willful violation of New York City human rights, particularly discriminating against people with disabilities, or the $1,000 fine. I get it. Rock in a hard place. Make your choice, I guess. Or you can get out of the cities. Now, it's more. It's more than just the police. Daily Mail reports more than 1,000 anti-vaxxers march on New York City streets to protest de Blasio's vaccine mandate, which forces everyone 12 and older to show proof of vaccine to get into restaurants, bars, entertainment, and gyms. Anti-vaxxers. Isn't it funny how they say that? Anti-vaxxer used to mean somebody who just opposed vaccination in general. That's what it was. And there were online communities that were like ranting about just all sorts of things. And then there are people, for the most part, overwhelmingly, who love vaccines. Okay, maybe love is a strong word, but have a general net positivity towards vaccination. You know, for instance, I think vaccines are some of the greatest technologies we have ever developed. I mean, you want to talk about some of the most important things you can get for the apocalypse, antiseptics, right? What happens if all of a sudden you're living in the middle of the woods, you could stub your toe, got to chop your foot off. Nah, that's bad, right? Check it out. You got a bottle of Listerine lying around, you stub your toe, you splash it on there, boom, save your whole leg. Imagine if we had antiseptics during, in Civil War, for instance. How many people wouldn't have lost limbs? It's interesting, infection. But beyond that comes vaccines. You see, the antiseptic can stop an infection. A vaccine can prevent it from even, causing you any of the harm in the first place. Smallpox eliminated, polio eliminated. It's amazing, isn't it? And now we have people who are like, well, I shouldn't be forced to get a medication. And I agree with that. It's none of the government's business. I certainly understand concerns about public health and what that means for the greater society at large. But I tell you this, for all the pros and cons, we are a nation that says you make your individual choices. If there's going to be a change, maybe have a vote on something. But to come out and force people, that's where the line gets crossed. Now take a look at what's happening in New York City. A Manhattan restaurant said business dropped up to 25% in a week, and its owner blames the vaccine mandate. Business Insider reports Art DePaul, who co-owns the Mooya Burgers, Fries, and Shakes restaurant in Times Square, told Insider the mandate was deterring people from visiting his establishment. This loss in business could cause his restaurant to raise prices. Under rules introduced last week, people need to provide proof of at least one COVID shot to eat in the restaurant. And this is not even in the article, I will say, and a photo ID. He said that he didn't think worries about the Delta variant could have caused the sudden drop because Delta cases were already high anyway. The previous week, in which the Delta variant was still spreading, was far better in sales than last week. I believe from speaking to people that it's more because of the mandate. The vaccine mandate was very polarizing in comparison with past mask mandates. Restaurants that voluntarily enforced their own vaccine mandates told Insider some customers had left bad reviews and threatened to spit on and cough on staff of the policy. Now, that is something you don't do. Look, don't use the worst examples to condemn literally everybody, right? But I will say, anybody who's starting to spit a cough on somebody, yeah, that's disgusting. And you should be arrested if you do that. I'm not saying they should be thrown in prison, but spitting on people is battery in most places. You're like making physical contact with the intent to cause some kind of harm. Quote, I never had one incident with a customer who gave me a hard time when they were asked to wear a mask. DePaul said he understood the reasoning behind the vaccine mandate, but that the restaurant industry was the easy target and being unfairly picked on. We're being singled out as someone who has to enforce this mandate while other large retailers aren't having to go through the same type of requirements that we are to allow customers to enter. Well, I'll tell you this. You want to know who's at fault? You think I'm going to come out here and blame Bill de Blasio? You'd be wrong. Absolutely wrong. One man saying words is meaningless to me. Now, I get it. If someone incites violence or a mob, we'll hold them accountable. And Bill de Blasio should be held accountable, removed from office, impeached, whatever. But each and every one of these individuals who uphold this discriminatory policy in violation of the law, that's on you. You make that choice. And they say, oh, but the government's coercing me. It's okay. Well, tell that to a judge. The government coerced you. And maybe you will avoid the $250,000 fine for your willful violation of human rights. This is true in New York City. If you discriminate against someone on the basis of a medical disability, willfully, $250,000 fine. I'm sure when you go to court or when you're being challenged over this, you can simply say, I was coerced and it was entrapment. Or let's be fair. If the city's mandating it, they probably wouldn't fine you for that. But would New York State? What about a federal lawsuit? That might come down on you. And what happens when people see a quick buck? You know, there are a lot of people, they'll go around to bars that have ladies' night. And then they'll try to get in or they'll demand ladies' night pricing. It'll say like 20% off for women on ladies' night or 20% off entry. And the guy will come up and say, I demand you give me the lower price. And when they say no, they say, okay, file a lawsuit, instantly win because you're not allowed to do this, and then walk away with a quick couple grand. There are people who do this and make a living doing it. Now, no joke. You could win several $1,000s instantly. And all they got to do is look up in online ladies' night in their city, and they can just go around doing it. And they call themselves civil rights activists, huh? Outside of what's happening here with these businesses, let's talk about what's happening around the world. Libs of TikTok, you know them, you love them, posting these videos of New York City, Hawaii, Las Vegas. But here we go. Switzerland, Ireland, Berlin, Paris, London, Belgium, Montreal, Australia, Scotland, Greece. In all of these places, people are rising up and protesting against vaccine mandates. It's not an issue it's not a medical issue, in my opinion. Somewhat tangentially, I suppose, this is a freedom issue and it is a sound policy issue. Mandating people whose doctors have said no will cause more problems, more vaccine hesitancy. And there have been many conservatives who have pointed out, you know what? If they came out and just said, look, here's the data, we advise you to get it, talk to your doctor about what's right for you, and do your best. So many more people would have gone out. They made it easy. They made it accessible. And I think these are good things. But then they started doing weird things. Win $1 million. Then they started doing even weirder things. Do it or else. We'll fine you. Some companies want to fine their employees, charge them a surcharge. New York City says it's time for the stick. Yeah, what did de Blasio say? Something about we had the carrot and the stick approach, and now it's time for the stick. Is that something the government should be allowed to do? No, I don't think so. And you know what? A lot of people agree with me. I hope you're ready for this. From CBS, New York, hundreds protest COVID vaccine mandates outside New York City Hall. From Mercury News, San Jose passes new vaccination mandate despite disruption from maskless protesters. Another city with mandates, still protests. This one from the Des Moines Register. 200 protesters picketed outside Des Moines Mercy One Medical Center, decrying the decision by Mercy One, the area's 7 other hospitals, to require mandatory vaccines. Here's more. Hundreds protest vaccine mandate in San Francisco. From KAIT 8, healthcare workers protest vaccine mandates in hospitals. This from Jonesboro, Arkansas. We then have St. Vincent's. What is this? What is it? Jacksonville, Florida. We then have Sayre, Pennsylvania, healthcare workers. These are healthcare workers protesting this. There's more. Come on. Hartford healthcare employees rally against vaccine mandate. Florida nursing home protest. COVID vaccine mandates as deaths climb. We have this one. Grand Junction, Colorado. Anti-mandate group holds new protest. Here we go. Healthcare workers protest vaccine mandate in Roswell, New Mexico. Here's Duluth News Tribune in western North Dakota City. Nurses and supporters protest vaccine mandates. Waco. Healthcare workers protest against vaccine mandates. Hundreds protest mask mandate in COVID-19 vaccine requirement outside Genesis West in Davenport, Iowa. There's more. Hundreds gather at Capitol. And this is, what is this one? This was Minnesota. This is the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, Minnesota State Capitol on Saturday, voicing their concerns. Here we go. Hundreds gather in Santa Monica to protest against proposed vaccine mandates. Now, you want to know why I really love this story from the other day? Dude here on the left has a rainbow "Don't Tread on Me" flag. Here, good sir. I love it. I got to get me one of those flags. I think it's fantastic. Don't tread on me. You know what that means? You want to have your pride flag? Yes. And ain't nobody going to be treading on you, because that's what this country is all about. I want to see all the "Don't Tread on Me" flags. I don't care what look, I want to see a lot of people defending their right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, telling you to screw off, leave them alone. So long as they're not hurting other people, I believe they should be allowed to do their thing. Now, of course, there are big questions when it comes to hospitals and medical issues. There's a big challenge, but I tell you this, man. My view, I'll give you the example of cigarettes in bars in Chicago. I don't smoke. I hate smoke. I hate people smoking around me. I can't stand it. And when they said they were going to ban businesses from having people smoke inside, I said, what business is it of the city to do that? And so many non-smokers said, they shouldn't be allowed to let people smoke inside because, what if I want to go in? Well, they have smoking and non-smoking sections on purpose to accommodate you. And you know what? If you don't I want to go to bars and everyone's always smoking in bars. Okay. Well, don't go to the bars that have all that. But every bar does. Well, too bad. It's not your bar. Now, I got to admit, I think it's way nicer. There's no more smoking in business in these buildings. But whose right is it to take that away from a private business that they want to allow? I saw something funny once when I was in Arizona. A bar cut a 1x1 hole in their ceiling, no joke, so that they could be qualified as an outdoor establishment, and thus smoking was still permitted. Why? What's the point of that? You didn't change anything. They just cut a hole in their ceiling. That's how the rules work. My friends, if you think I'm done with the stories about protests, you would be wrong. Just a little bump in the road, a little stop. Here we go. U.S. Air Force Academy, Colorado. Demonstrators protest mandatory vaccines for Air Force Academy cadets. Here's another one. Medical tyranny. Ascension Franklin nurses and others rally to protest mandated vaccines. Milwaukee. Oh, there's more. King 5, Seattle. I'll give up my job. State workers protest vaccine mandate. From 9ABC, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Protesters gather. Unity Point, St. Luke's. All right, this is a repeat. I want to make sure this one's a repeat. I didn't realize because I didn't see Cedar Rapids and Davenport, but I guess it's basically the same story. Healthcare workers protest West Virginia medicine vaccine mandate in Morgantown, West Virginia. Now, here's where it gets interesting. I am proud to see so many people in so many different cities standing up and saying, we reject this, because you know what? Protests work. If you can sustain it. And if you mean it, and if you're willing to go out there and march and wave that little sign, it works. It absolutely does. We talked about this during the George Floyd riots. When people peacefully protest, they get positive news coverage, which changes the conversation. And when people see that the majority are in favor or not in favor of certain ideas, they tend to be swung towards those ideas. So if people are not willing to get out and protest peacefully, then people are going to say no one must care. And when people go out and riot violently, you know what happens? Regular people get scared and say, I don't like this, and negative press coverage hurts the cause, which is why support for Black Lives Matter, net support, is lower now than where it was at the beginning of last year. You see, net support for Black Lives Matter hit something like 25%. There was almost no opposition. And then they started rioting in the wake of the George Floyd incident. And what happened to that? They lost support and gained massive opposition. Violent riots failed, and Black Lives Matter was hurt because of it, and we all said it. Now, as for these peaceful protests, I think they're going to work. But let's take a look at what's happening in the developments of the expansive authoritarianism. EU to remove U.S. from COVID-safe travel list. American travelers face a ban on non-essential journeys and new quarantine restrictions as the EU removes the U.S. from a safe travel list. EU governments are set to blacklist American tourists later this afternoon after a surge in U.S. infections. The decision is not automatically binding, but it sets the framework for new European restrictions on transatlantic travel after a summer of eased rules. One key factor in the decision has been America's refusal since June to allow vaccinated European travelers to visit the U.S. for non-essential reasons, such as tourism or visiting family members. The decision is primarily because the worsening COVID infection situation in the U.S., but Washington's decision to keep restrictions for Europeans all summer has made taking it all that much easier, an EU diplomat had said. Earlier this month, Germany led calls to ban all non-essential American visitors to Europe if the Biden administration did not open U.S. borders to Europeans. The U.S. will be removed from a whitelist of 23 countries for which the EU recommends that travel restrictions should be lifted, along with Kosovo, Israel, Montenegro, Lebanon, and North Macedonia. Travelers from countries on the safe list can usually enter the EU without a 10 or 14-day quarantine by showing a proof of vaccination or a negative test. Those from countries not on the list are barred from non-essential visits and face stringent testing and quarantine requirements that rule out holidays. At present, most EU countries do not require Americans with a negative COVID test result to quarantine upon arrival, the biggest obstacle to tourism. Belgium, Ireland, and Poland do ask U.S. tourists to self-isolate for short periods while awaiting a COVID test result. It will be up to European countries that are dependent on tourism, such as Italy, Greece, and Spain, to decide if vaccinated Americans can still travel over the coming days. I have a feeling Greece will not be implementing these bans, but who knows? Who knows? There are a lot of protests happening in Greece. Greek police used tear gas, water cannon during Athens' vaccine protest. But to be honest, I've been to Athens a couple times, I think, or technically a couple times because I traveled around Europe. But they protest, man, and they protest a lot. So it's not unusual. You walk around and there's some kind of civil unrest. But I'll tell you where things are starting to get worrisome. From timcast.com. Switzerland warns of potential terror attacks on vaccination sites. Now, that is scary. The Swiss Federal Intelligence Service voiced its concern with the national newspaper over the weekend. You want to know why this is scary? Because we're about freedom. And that means if you make the choice to go get the vaccine because you are either advised to do it, you think it's best for you, I respect your decision. And I say, you know what? You got to do what's right for you. And I will not tell you how to live your life. You do what you got to do. You talk to your doctor. We've had so many guests on Timcast IRL who have gotten the vaccine and are fine and said their doctor recommended it, and that's their choice. That's what it's all about. I'm pro-choice. How about that? I've always been pro-choice in terms of medical decisions. I've not been pro-authoritarian mandate for medical decisions. Just not. Mayor Bloomberg in New York. He proposed a tax on large sodas because he said people were dumb. And he thought that it was bad for them. And you know what? Well, it is bad for people. Soda's awful. I don't drink it anymore. In fact, I've cut sugar, all these refined sugars, out of my diet. I've been eating more leafy greens and fresh meats and cheeses and fats, trying to eat better, just improve my general well-being with, I guess you could call it paleo to a certain degree. It's kind of keto, but a lot of people don't understand the ketogenic diet is tons of fat, like guzzling whipped cream and stuff, which I have been eating a lot of, but I would say more like paleo. I'm trying to get away from the breads, the grains, the sugars, the garbage. And you know what? I'm only drinking water. I don't want any of that garbage because I do want to be healthy. And I see these stories and I say, you know what? I'm going to make a decision that's right for me. But if you want to eat cheeseburgers all day and night, I ain't going to stop you. Just don't expect me to pay for your health care. Now, as for this story out of Switzerland, I hope that people respect the right of others to make those medical choices. Because we saw, I think it was in France, people set fire to vaccination sites. That is wrong. That is the opposite of freedom. If the government wants to set up these vaccine sites where people can go and get these treatments, I'm all for it. Just not mandates. The idea that the government would provide medical services to people, to me, is a good thing. I'd love a universal healthcare system. And my view of it is the more traditional leftist approach of you got to have private insurance supplementing the public stuff. The public, universal healthcare is like you break your arm, they'll set it for you, you get sick, they'll make sure you don't die, insulin and things like that, which Trump lowered the price on. And then if there's more serious ailments, you're going to need private insurance. That's how most of the world does it. The left today just wants to abolish private insurance, which is crazy. Now, I'll be honest with you. Considering the way the government's handled public health emergencies, I don't know if I could be in favor of a U.S. implementation of universal health care as much as I do think it's a good thing. Because they tried rolling out the vaccines by race. They're trying to mandate medical procedures. No, I won't support that because I believe in freedom. And truth be told, when it comes to universal health care, people might say, how can you mandate, this tax on everybody? No, I'm not for that. I'm for to be honest, unanimity. If the people of this country overwhelmingly agree, a supermajority, that this is a system they want, I'm all for it. But I won't go to someone with the force of government and tell them they have to live a certain way. And so that being said, I think a lot that we have implemented in this country has been overtly authoritarian and put in place through coercive force. Not a fan. I don't have all the answers, my friends. But I'll tell you this, we'll leave it on an optimistic note. The people are saying no to authoritarianism, and it's a good thing. Hopefully more people speak up, stand up, and that's what it's all about, man. That's what it's all about. My respect to each and every one of these individuals. Next segment's coming up tonight at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.